Perhaps you could just tell me a bit about your background and the story up until sort of the first sort of Diddy dance, perhaps.
Yeah, of course. So I started dancing about the age of 3. My mum took me along to a local dance school and I really enjoyed it. And she'd said, pick one dance style. And I was like, I want to do all of them. So she reluctantly agreed. And then my dance teacher saw something in me. I think I had good feet. So she asked me to go along twice a week, and sort of my passion grew from there and loved it. And then as I sort of hit GCSE age, I looked into it as a career option. And I didn't really know as to what level I'd want to go down, performing or teaching, because I'd help out and assist in my local dance school and also even with some school work as well. And so GCSE dance wasn't available when I was at school, that old, and but A-level was. So after that went on to A-levels, and then I went on and did my degree in dance. So I did my first year at London Contemporary Dance School, and then was able to transfer and did my last 2 years of my degree up at the Northern School of Contemporary Dance. So I graduated there with a first, and that's where my passion for performing came from. So as many dancers traveled around the world and did various different contracts in various different dance styles. But whenever I wasn't traveling, I would always come back to teaching. So I'd always enjoyed teaching dance of all different styles. And so I was teaching at lots of different dance schools, but also for some of the big brands, Stagecoach and Theatre Train as such. And then I moved down to London, I think it was 1999. So I graduated in 97 and then decided that London was the place I needed to be. So I'm originally from Derby. And so living in London, it was the whole audition experience, so going around there. But as much as I could, I kept that teaching, and I tried to find more teaching work as well. So I'd always taught from sort of 5 years upwards, and I'd loved it, and it was all great. And then I think through the teaching and performing work, you're never knowing where the next job's coming from. Mm-hmm. So promotional jobs, hospitality work, all of that. I worked for a hospitality agency, promotions agency for a while, doing all the booking. And then I just decided an office job wasn't for me. And so I ended up finding some play classes that were for babies and toddlers. And that was in North London. And I was like, oh, I really enjoy this. And it was during the week. And it was there that a load of the adults there, parents and childminders and nannies, said to me, this was 2003, said to me, right, Anne-Marie, you're a dancer. We're looking for a really fun, energetic dance class for our, 2 and 3 year olds. You should start something. You're really good with this age group. And I was like, really? What? I'm not quite sure what we can get out of 2 and 3 year olds here, but there was definitely this demand for it. And there was loads of dance schools around, but it was more for 3-4 year olds and above. And also that first introduction to a dance class was still quite a formal one they were finding. And so they were coming back to me sort of saying, we tried in this certain class or at this certain school, and it was quite formal, and they've come out not enjoying it and saying they don't want to dance. Well, that was the trigger for me. If that child's first introduction to dancing is a negative one, and they don't want to dance, then something needs to be done about it. So they booked me a venue and they told me to turn up and said, come on, you can do it. And so that first class was a little bit daunting, but what I'd discovered in those play classes were the elements that were repeated, the hello song, the goodbye song, all the things that even these 18-month-old 2-year-olds were doing repeatedly every week. They were really retaining it. So I was like, okay, I think there's a lot they can take in. And then I made sure that I tried to do as much early years development work and research as I could to really see how they develop at this age and just develop the classes from there. So I went from this one class a week to, I think we ended up with about 7 classes a week just in this one venue in North London. Like, wow, the demand is huge. And so 2003, there also wasn't a lot of toddler activities around back then, 18, 19 years ago. So I developed the sessions and we brought in lots of props and things that really helped with their fine and gross motor skills to really get them developing and enjoying moving to music. And then I think it was around 2006, I thought, okay, the concept seems to be working. It's popular with me and my classes. Let me test how it would be with teachers if I train them up. And they were popular. Let me see how it would be in different areas of London. So one of the stagecoach areas I was teaching for was in Southeast London. And so I thought, well, I already know a lot of parents there. So when I start advertising, they would know about me. So I tested a few different areas in London and then thought, okay, that all works now, taking myself out of the equation with teachers. It works in different areas. I'd loosely heard of the term franchising and thought maybe this is a good option for my business and how to develop that. So I went to a franchise consultant and we sort of did a feasibility study on where I was operating, all the figures involved, and then did what's called a pilot franchise. So a couple of friends of mine who were also sort of maybe stopping performing or looking at more teaching work, we came up with, they took on areas outside of London and tested it with me in return for a free franchise. And then after that, well, then 2007, I fell pregnant and had my first child at 2008. So the franchising went on the back burner a bit, but we still had, I think it was 7 pilots at the time. And then in 2010, I decided, right, okay, ready now, a bit more settled into motherhood and let's push it. So 2010 was when we really started franchising. So it was a very long-winded answer for you there.
Well, no, it's a very good answer because well, first of all, you covered at least another one of my questions that I was going to ask you. So you've done my job for me. And second of all, yeah, I think it's so wonderful when that sort of thing happens, where that lovely Venn diagram of something you enjoy and something you're good at, when you hit that bit in the middle, right? It feels like it. And I was going to ask you, what's your catalyst? But I think it's quite clear what your catalyst was. It really lit a fire under you that you found a good niche, and then, well, a niche which is actually quite ginormous. So yeah, and I love the fact. Yeah, and I love the fact. Yeah, as you say, we've got 2 kids, and when my wife had the first one, it does sets you back a bit, doesn't it, in terms of, especially from a woman's perspective. But yeah, I love the fact you just took the ball by the horns once you got back in the game. It's always good to hear. So I read on your website you have 40 locations. How do you sort of maintain visibility, or like how? I guess you're obviously closely associated to the brand, if you will, which can be a bit of a cheesy word, but how do you sort of maintain that quality? And is that a challenge?
Well, I think the reason why I decided to franchise the business was because, I wanted that brand to be the same experience wherever somebody was going. And I felt that franchising, rather than maybe more of a licensing option, gave me more control on what the expectations were for other people running it, but also a very attractive offer to somebody out there who maybe has got a love for dance or maybe enjoys working with this age group, but wouldn't really know the best structure for a class for that age group. And so I thought, okay, I've created all these lesson plans. It makes that franchise opportunity a lot more attractive because you definitely do have that business in a box, and they get all the lesson plans given to them. We do a full week's training with them, and then there's continued ongoing support, not just for the teaching side, but for the business as well, to help them grow their businesses as well. And we get industry experts in on all different things. But really, the core of it is my passion hasn't waned. The more I have learnt about this age group, the more I have worked with child psychologists and early years movement specialists, the more I've understood the importance of what we do as well, of that first introduction. And, my passion's just grown. So I still teach myself. And I think that's valuable to the franchisees because they know I'm experiencing things firsthand. And then whenever we create a new element or we introduce a new dance style, they know I'm just not sitting there making it up my head. I'm, you know, these things through experience and through still doing it myself. So it's definitely a two-way street with the franchise network, that making sure you're listening to them as well, because they're on the front line as well, but really still being hands-on to make sure those standards are maintained.
Makes sense. Yeah, thank you for that answer. What have been sort of your, I guess, your biggest challenges, and how have you overcome them? Or there is a particular challenge along your sort of journey that you had to overcome, if you can pinpoint one? I appreciate you've probably been through many ups and downs.
Yeah, many. I think I think one of the biggest things I would say I've learned from is, you know, I come from a dance background. My dissertation was in teaching special educational needs. It wasn't in business, it wasn't in finance, it wasn't in trade projections and profit and loss and any of that. So that was a big learning curve on that side of the business. But things like trademarking, that is a massive thing I always talk about to any business owner. So the classes were originally called Funky Feet, and that's because I looked on the trademark register and nobody owned that. Okay. And so I bought the trademark. Then when I came to franchise the business, my franchise consultant, I went, everything's okay because I own the trademark, we're all good to go. And he said, so are there's no other classes across the UK that are called Funky Feet? I was like, well, it doesn't matter, I own the trademark.
Yeah.
When did you buy the trademark? At this date. So what about the people that were already running classes called that? And I was like, it doesn't matter, I just stopped them. And you can't. So a big thing is, when you buy don't just go and buy it, because if somebody's been running something similar to yours under that name, even though they've not bought the trademark, you can't stop them using that name. And when you come to franchise a business, it has to be a unique name that your franchisees are buying into. Otherwise they're running a Funky Feet class, and you know the local dance school's also got Funky Feet. It just causes confusion. It's not a unique brand. So that was devastating, and I felt such a waste of money that we then had to come up with a new name. And as it happens, it came up in about 5 minutes. You know, I like alliteration. What do? Well, we dance. They're little. They're Diddy. Dance. It was as quick as that. And it does do a lot more than that it says on the tin than Funky Feet. And so that was easy. But then, and in the end, a few years down the line, I actually sold that original trademark of Funky Feet. So I didn't actually lose out, but I immediately did a Google search that no other classes were already using that, and bought the trademark and the logo and everything straight away. So that was a massive learning curve. But I think another big takeaway would be, I've always been, as a franchisor especially, I must know all the answers. I must have knowledge in all areas of running a business. And actually you don't, because that's what you bring in the experts for. So if you have your play to your strengths, I'm trying to say, keep to your strengths and what you are strong at doing, and then anything that you're not strong at doing, bring in somebody who has that skill that is better than you at doing it, and get them in to do it for you. So that's a big learning curve as well.
Yeah, you've done it again. You've answered two of my questions. I was going to ask you, I was going to say, what piece of advice would you give someone looking to start a franchise? But I think you've given a really salient sort of golden nugget there around trademarking. And I think, well, you have to go through these mistakes, right? Because you're human, and then you learn from them. And it sounds like, if anything, it was kind of it pushed you in a direction that you probably wouldn't have expected. So in terms of the naming, so maybe. And I was also going to ask, where do you turn for business support or resources? But you, again, really salient point around leaning on expertise, right? You can outsource it. I think that's extremely valuable. So yeah, thank you for that, Marie. So okay, you've thrown me now. So in terms of, I guess I don't want to mention it too much because hopefully it's gone. But in terms of the volume of new franchisees pre and post lockdown and lockdown itself, how did that impact you? Was it just a typical, I guess a typical across that business, the performing arts business, or in the classes business? Obviously it was affected, but have you seen an uptick since now that things are calming down a bit? Hopefully?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I was just talking about that on a franchise webinar earlier. I think it's another massive learning curve. You know, it was something that we were all thrown into that none of us have been through before. So when you're suddenly hit with a lockdown and what do we do here? We managed to go online very quickly. We own all of our own copyright on our music. So streaming anything was a lot easier for us because obviously our content wasn't getting blocked because we own the music. But you get to a point where, you know, we all thought it would be a couple of months. So we retained a lot of our customers online, and the children were happy at home, still seeing our faces and dancing along with us. And then under fives and screens,
it's hard.
Yeah, it's tough. So they had lots of distractions at home. So that started to wane. And as it all seemed to drag on a little bit longer, it was, okay, what do we do now? And that is always going to affect somebody's mindset in a way you can never predict. So there was certainly over the past 2 years, franchisees that decided that it wasn't for them anymore. When something like that happens and you have to then figure out guidance and you feel responsible for the safety of your customers, that's a lot of pressure to take on.
Yeah.
And even though being in a franchise network is great because you have the whole network to support, you're not trying to figure this out all out on your own. I still think when you're a service-based business like a dance school, you do have that very close responsibility to your customers. And so I think that waned on some of them, that it was just too much pressure, too much stress. And a lot of them that we lost, I think there was only 3, but they decided to go into public sector work. So a lot of them have gone into education and schools. But then coming on board, we've found new franchisees that have come the other way, that have come from teaching, because it was so awful. And I don't want to get moaning, but our teachers were not valued during the lockdowns and the pandemics, and the media slated them, and they said they were lazy because they didn't, all of this horrible messaging that came out. Teachers were really starting to feel undervalued, and so started looking for, right, I'm going to do something for myself now where I can feel valued. So we saw a lot of inquiries come in there, and also people realizing that the job security they thought they had, especially when furlough ended, wasn't there now. So now it's the time to take the plunge and start my own business. And what a better way of starting my own business than going into a franchise network where there's other people doing it with me and I've got that support. So I would say we've balanced it out. It feels that the past probably 3 years now, we've just stayed the same. We haven't grown, but that's because, you know, the ones we've lost, we've brought new ones in. So not a massive growth, but I'm just happy that we are still at the same level we were.
Yeah. Well, I think that's an achievement, to be honest with you. And as you say, quite an emotional time for a lot of people involved, especially teachers, because they were,
absolutely,
criticism was ridiculous. I guess speaking of growth, the numbers kind of speak for themselves, but how have you found, how have you sort of got to that scale, and is there like an advertising channel that you use to help you scale in the business in this way, or how do you do that? So
that is $1 million question.
Yeah, I know, right?
The virtual conference that I was on today was all discussing that, and there are various different channels that people use. Some are industry specific and some are sort of funneling channels, but I think it's about analyzing who your ideal franchisee is. So, you know, you look at your current network, or you look at who you are and your ideal franchisee, and where would they be. And I think some of our franchisees have been dancers, dance teachers, and as I say, teachers in primary and secondary schools. But we've also had franchisees come from banking backgrounds, corporate hospitality. But I think for us, we try and look for people to maximize profit in the business would be delivering the classes themselves. So we do look people with a sort of performance or dance background. I mean, the level of dance we teach is sort of stamping and clapping at the same time. So it's more a level of coordination. We don't teach any technique or alignment or posture. That's all for when they're older and they go off to the dance schools. We are about just introducing them on a really basic level to move into music. So we look for people on various different channels. And something I was talking about today actually is that post-pandemic, we're not necessarily out of it, but pandemic has definitely changed the mindset of a lot of people. Job security isn't there. So I think that's prompted a lot of inquiries. I think a lot of people that maybe had their own business really struggled during the pandemic, as I said, figuring out guidance and how can I reopen, and just, I can't figure this out on my own. I've closed. And then a few months later, they've still got that passion, but, maybe it's good to join a franchise network. So yeah, there's various different routes and various different channels. And I think finding those people that might be interested in dancing with toddlers has changed as well. I mean, and I use TikTok for that a lot as well, which is an interesting platform that not many people would think about in the form of recruitment or business promotion. So there is no one hard fast rule. There are various different channels, franchise portals, social media, lots of different things. So I think it will very much differ for who you're looking for and where they might be at.
Yep. As you say, $1 million question. But yeah, I think well, your answer is bang on, isn't it? It's entirely depends on the circumstance and the location, and then you tailor it to that approach rather than a one size fits all.
Absolutely.
Do you, if a franchisee comes to you and is struggling for customers, do you have like a way of supporting them through that if they're struggling to get people into their classes, or you have a model to help them to fill those? Does that happen? I guess it can.
It's all we can do is give them as much knowledge and education as possible. So we've got social media marketing and PR experts that we have in the team.
Perfect.
So they always help them on that level. And then sometimes we get guest experts in discussing either new channels or how can they use video content more. So we try and bring in as much education and information as we can to everybody, but also we do a lot of national advertising for them as well on a brand level, also through digital marketing, targeted adverts, all those sort of things. We do try and generate as many leads for them all across the network as possible. But the whole point of franchising is that they are local to their community. So they are reaching out to the people in their area. And that's where the best connections can be. Nobody wants to hear from me on the national page about how great it is. They want to know what's available in their area. And that has to come from that local person. And that's why I believe franchising is a great option for growth, because you've got those key people on the ground in their community, connecting with their local customers and creating their own small business to support their family.
Makes perfect sense. I had a bit of a nitty gritty question, which you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but in terms of like the charging model, or how does it work for you? I know each franchise will have different ways of working. It could be like an upfront fee or percentage of income or based on the classes. Do you have are you quite transparent about what that is, or do you have a consultation?
No, absolutely. Every franchise will have an upfront franchise fee. And those can vary from low-cost startups like us at just under 5,000, right up to, franchising covers fast food restaurants, the lot, some of those hundreds of thousands of pounds. And then the ongoing cost is then where it varies. So some will charge a flat fee per month, and that is regardless of, how big the franchisee gets. They'll never have to pay any more. But for us, we go on a percentage of turnover. Okay. It just feels more relative to the style of business we're offering, that, sometimes it can take a while, because a lot of the time our franchisees are working around family life. They don't necessarily take on a business and it's a massive growth business very quickly. So that way the percentage-based model helps them grow gradually to fit around their lifestyle, and then they just obviously pay 10% of what comes in.
And I guess in that way, because they have your buy-in as well, right, for growth. So you're motivated to see them grow, and it goes hand in hand. And that's where the support and the mechanisms that you talk about, sort of the extensive, a couple of decades of experience you've got, and you feed that into them, and they see the benefit of that because you're invested in them growing as well, right? It's a mutual relationship.
Yeah, doesn't work so well in a pandemic when nobody's earning.
Yeah.
they still need that support. So there's a imbalance there, but that's also about understanding the nature of what happened and making sure you're there for them.
Some franchisors, I guess, have a very clear view of how all of their franchises are operating. Some might not have that in place. Do you feel like you've got a good, clear view of how things are going? Because obviously the larger it gets, you want to keep not control, but I guess a really nice, clear view of that. And do you ever have any concerns or have had experience of some fees or things not being collected due to a lack of visibility, or have you never really come across that during your time?
I think because as a business we've always grown organically, there's never been a big cash injection or a high worth investor come in that has suddenly launched a load of money that has made us push things very quickly.
Okay.
Which works for a lot of businesses, but because we've grown slowly and organically, everything that's come in I've plowed back into the business. So I've been able to analyze every step we've gone to as to this is where we can grow to now. And I've sort of lived by that, really. I don't, and lots of business owners will scowl at me now, but I don't set long-term goals. I don't have big, massive plans of we must be at this, then we must be at that then. I just like to grow at a pace where I feel we are still transparent, honest, and just can deliver that level of service. I'd hate to suddenly go from 40 franchisees and jump up to 60 very quickly and us feel very out of control that we're not still delivering that same service to them. So there's still lots of one-to-one work that we do with the franchisees. They all get a personal visit after the first term. They all get personal visits every 3 years. But the team, there's 5 of us now, and that workload is shared. So I feel that we've got the infrastructure in place to grow to the next level of, say, the next 10. But also I don't try and plan too far ahead of, right, this time next year we're going to be at 50 and then 55 and 60, and then try and plan ahead for that, and something like a pandemic comes up and then you go, oh, invested all this money in something that now can't happen for however long. So yeah, I like to take it at pace and grow a bit more organically, really.
That makes sense. Right, 2 more questions from me, Marie. So first one, just pushing it more towards, obviously we work with lots of clubs and help them sort of manage their admin. Do you sort of, for your franchises, do they have sort of a blueprint of how to manage their admin? Because as you will know, and as your franchises will know, running classes and chasing payments and all that sort of stuff, do you kind of give them a blueprint of how to manage that admin, or like the tools to do that?
Absolutely. And I would say, what you guys do is absolutely invaluable. I don't think you can run a really successful business, especially a franchise network, unless you have software systems in place. You have to have a certain level of automation that takes out the headache for you. So when I first started the business, we were all manually taking cash or checks in classes, and then you're manually recording that, and we had little like Excel templates that we do. And then a long time ago, we had a bespoke system built for us.
Yeah, nice.
And it not only eases the customer process, but it eases all of the franchisees' admin processes, and that is what you want. And obviously that's what you guys do. The customer books and pays for their half-term block, and what we do is a mass payment split. So the 90% goes directly to the franchisee, and that 10% management service fee comes directly to us. So payment is taken at source, so we're not having to chase things up. It's a lot better for the franchisees' cash flow. They know where they are. They haven't suddenly got a big lump sum to pay every month. And it really does ease their life of a business owner so much, because it is all done for them. They can pull off reports, they can look at their finances, they can see how the business is growing, and they can get all their customers booked in at the click of a button. So yeah, it's vital.
Just out of intrigue, really. So does all classes must be paid for online? There's no like offline or cash payments, because obviously then, because the way you've got it now sounds ideal, right? It happens at source, and then you have total visibility on where the 90%, the 10%. But what about classes that could be paid for cash, or is that not how you guys tend to operate?
Yeah, we don't tend to operate that way. However, because we offer services into schools and preschools and nurseries, and also we offer parties, they can't be booked through the system because it's for classes. And so there is an element of trust there, as well, as to at the end of the month, we give them their report of what's come in for classes, and then automated what's been taken, and then they can add in their parties and their early years setting sessions into that, and then if there's a small amount that they owe on that, then they'll pay that.
Makes perfect sense. Right, well, I have a final question. I was going to ask you what the next 2 years looks like for you, but you just said that you don't like to do that sort of thing. But I guess sort of what's next for Diddy Dance? Like, if you could say like what's next, what's on your, or could you even, what's your next sort of like even the micro target, or like your sort of?
Yeah, no, we have still got targets. I think.
Oh no, I wasn't dismissing that. I was sort of thinking.
No, but as in, I don't set almost financial figures targets, or growth targets, because I would love to finally grow and hit that 50 franchisees. But also I think sometimes when you set yourself figures based targets, it can change your decisions. It can really affect your decision making. So if I set this target, I want 50 franchisees by this time next year, I might rush into decisions on those franchisees because I'm desperately trying to hit these targets, and those franchisees might not be right for the business. So I don't set targets like that, but there are lots of things in the pipeline still. So during the pandemic, we launched the channel on TikTok, and it's been an amazing channel for us. And there's lots of development going on there to keep growing that, because it's resulted in some great customer inquiries. So I think a lot of our video content is something that we're developing. We had new uniforms made last summer, so that was quite a nice big development for us. And we are just trying to build Diddy Dance as a preschool brand now. So the 3 characters from our logos, we've just started animating.
Oh, wow.
And so they've come to life, and we'd love to develop that a little bit more on our YouTube channel, and then just develop the merchandise element, so the kids can buy their t-shirts and their hoodies and water bottles and bags, as most places can. We had the figures created into dolls. We have full skin characters that we use at events and festivals. So I'd love to bring those 3 to life even more, maybe with a series, maybe with some books, and really just work on it being a recognized toddler preschool brand now. So that I would never want to take away from the classes and the service that but just to enhance that brand and always be dance based. So toddlers starting nursery or eating new foods or potty training would still be linked back to the songs that we have. So creating like pop videos and things, but based on things that toddlers go through. So there are some big plans there. But
I love that you said it
costs big money as well.
I love that you say, no, we don't, I don't want to plan too much ahead, or I don't really have, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and then you reel off this incredible growth plan. Which is it sounds amazing, to be honest.
Frames or numbers associated with that, though. It's like at some point we will do that.
Yeah, but these are big ideas. It's exciting, hey? Exciting.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you so much for spending your time doing this. It's the first. I've got about 5 interviews lined up, and if the other 4 are half as good as this, I'll be really pleased, to be honest. So